This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. I'm Dr. Duke, and we are joined today by our good friend with a good sense of humor, Dr. Jake Jacobs. Jake, always good to see you.
Hello, Duke.
Enjoyed our time last week where we had a bit of a debate. I thought Mike said that was a very good, powerful segment we did.
And I hope Biden runs and doesn't quit, because I am getting a nice big fat juicy steak.
You got a
thanks to you.
You got a better chance seeing God tomorrow than you have for that. But we have a different story to talk about today, and that's tens of thousands of pro-Israel people finally come out in Washington, D.C. The news has been dominated by all these left-wing pro-Palestinian clown show so-called protests where they engage in violence and threats. Notice what happened in Washington, D.C. We had almost 300,000 pro-Israel people file into the streets, and not a single example of beatings or hostility or threats. Very, very adult, what protest should be. Everybody has the right to peacefully protest, and unfortunately, it's only the pro-Israel people who are doing it. Take a look at the video coverage we have.
The nation's capital was on high alert today as tens of thousands converged on the National Mall to show support for Israel.
A tsunami of hate has crashed down upon us.
Actress Deborah Messing was among the speakers calling for the release of the hostages.
Our light will shine until the darkness is defeated.
The Department of Homeland Security termed the rally a Level 1 security event, the highest risk assessment, due to the disturbing wave of anti-Semitism sweeping America in the wake of the war. Our Allison Hall is there.
People from across the country are gathered here on the National Mall to unite in solidarity, showing their support for Israel. The atmosphere here is surprisingly light and hopeful, singing, cheering, and chanting.
Rally-goers came on convoys of buses from across America, and some on planes.
As Prime Minister Netanyahu says so well, this is a fight between good and evil, between light and darkness, between civilization and barbarism. The calls for a ceasefire are outrageous.
Our commitment to Israel's security is ironclad. And let me be clear, Israel has an absolute right to defend itself against Hamas terror.
You know, this is really important to see, I think. And doesn't it tell you everything you need to know, Jake, that the threat is not 300,000 people protesting for Israel? The highest security grade level, because the monsters on the other side, the percentage that they might attack or disrupt, that tells you everything you have to know about the two sides of this
the nature of leftism, the nature of wokeism in the world today. It is a vile philosophy that is not only anti-America, but anti-Israel, anti-Jewish. It's the anti-Judeo-Christian worldview. It is hell-bent on destroying the heavenly values that's reflected by the God of Israel. It really is very refreshing, by the way, Duke, to see this. The Torah, the Old Testament says, God says, I will bless those that bless thee, and I will curse those that curse thee. And America, in many ways, since Harry S. Truman recognized the state of Israel in 1948, to me has been profoundly blessed because of that association, because of that commitment to the people of Israel. And yet within our own nation right now, and as you know, around the world, there is this vile Jew hate that permeates in capitals from London to Paris to Brussels to Sydney. And this is a beautiful contrast to see that just like in America, where there's millions and millions of us that love this country, that love God Almighty, that love traditional, classic conservative and classic liberal values, there are millions who support Israel and the Jewish people.
Right, and they don't get the press and the coverage because we know that the media is biased, particularly the places like the BBC is an outrageously anti-Semitic organization, as is the New York Times, which is ironic given the number of Jewish people, ethnic Jews, who work there. That's the other thing. And I want to talk about that briefly. Wonderful news. Good to have this kind of representation. However, when you have people like Deborah Messing, right? The actress. I'd like to think she's good. Finally, she's on the right side of this, right? But you look at her public speech, her politics over the last 20 years, she is part of the problem. I mean, I hope liberal Jewish people begin to realize that you are supporting a left wing in this country that will sell you out the minute they get a chance. As soon as they can, when they have the power they want, you're not going to be welcome there for the reasons you're seeing now.
Saturn ate his own children.
Exactly.
And it's interesting to note when you think of the demonstrations that are held in Washington when Trump became president, and you had the pro-life marches that were peaceful, that were respectful, and then you had the radical, hardcore, woke feminist marches that were showing heads of Donald Trump being decapitated and calling for the White House to be burnt down. These are radicals, and many of them, like you just said, are from Hollywood. They're university professors, and they're perpetuating hate across the land.
And the point I'm making, too, is that Jews in America have a lot of freedom. They're hardworking. They become highly successful. They take advantage of the opportunities of America. God bless them. Good for them. But for so many of them, this limousine, cosmopolitan, left-wing ideology they've associated. People like Deborah Messing. Look, I got to tell you, in every other conflict, liberal Jews like Deborah Messing are going to side with the wrong side.
Well, they did in the 1930s, by the way.
Absolutely,
yes.
Right? And so, it's good to see a lot of progressive Jews, non-religious Jews, seeing that the Democrats and the progressives don't have their backs, that they never have their backs. I wonder when this crisis fades away, if they're going to go right back to being what they were before, agitating for the radical transform of America, getting rid of its traditional values. Far too many ethnic progressive Jews in this country seem to be pulling the wrong way when it comes to culture.
Yeah, Duke, and I think the sad fact is that once this settles down, they're going to go back to their own ways. Yes.
Yep. The next conflict, they'll be on the wrong side of it again. Yeah, yes. I think you're right. It's unfortunate, but again, America allows these freedoms. It's good to see that when their people are attacked, and even American Jews are being bullied and having to stay in their houses because they're afraid of walking around New York City. It's good to know that there's a limit, right, to progressive liberalism. Nice that they're able to see that and to attend a rally like this. And then, of course, you have Jeffries talking, right, the Democrat Party. And, there's a certain irony of this, right, because good to know that some of the Democrats are willing to speak out. But what did it take to get us to this point? It's the question that was asked of Bill Maher by Jordan Peterson. I'm going to ask you a question, he said, Peterson, that no liberal will ever answer for me. And Maher didn't either. When is it that the left goes too far? Are you willing, as a man of the left, are you willing to say the left has gone too far? And nobody wants to go that far, right? And that's the danger we have. We keep hearing that every little conservative movement is unacceptable. It crosses a line. It's evil. But no one ever asks liberals, is it possible for leftism to go too far?
And just stop and think of it. When you think of classic conservative values and thinking, they're values of life and liberty. They're values of decency and justice. They're not values of genocide and a distortion of historical reality or even human reality. They're common sense values that go back into antiquity that you have been teaching at the university for many years. And yet the madness within leftism, it is a disease of the mind and the soul. And it took this despicable, diabolical event to wake up some progressives. But I think eventually, when the dust settles on this, they're going to turn around and go back to their same old ways.
The evil that the universities and the progressive left have pulled off, the evil is insisting that their politics is morally, religiously true. They've turned politics into absolute morality.
Yep.
So you don't have to have an argument why Israel deserves murder and rape. You don't have to have a compelling argument. the religious orthodoxy, the dogma, and that's what the leftism is all about. It's dogma. You don't argue with it. You don't even have to understand it. You treat it as an absolute matter of faith and revelation that these are truth. And so not only do you vehemently oppose any other kind of thinking, you are entitled to despise people who don't agree with you.
I just got goosebumps on what you were saying, because when you use the word dogma, and the root word is the idea of doctrine within, let's say, a religious faith, it has, when you replace the God of creation, the God of Israel, there's a void, there's a vacuum, and you're going to replace it with a new God or gods. And that's what leftism is really all about. It's been since the Tower of Babel, where they have replaced the God of you and me, the God of creation, with their God of the state, or their God of what I call in wokeism is anything goesism. And it's interesting, you talked about their new absolutes. But they actually act in relativistic terms, that there is no absolute, but you're right, they replace it with their new absolute, which is the leftism that is out to destroy life and liberty.
Well, one of the ways you get rid of God philosophically is to argue that there is no such thing as an absolute. And they don't realize that by saying there are absolutely no absolutes, you've just
it's
done
a new
it.
Absolute.
And there's your hypocrisy,
Yes.
right? And that's the game they play. They get to tell you what is absolutely not true. And then when you question their ideology, they say, well, what is truth, right? Everybody has their own truth, right? And if everybody has their own truth, then
as they're
no truth.
shoving their so-called truth down your
got it.
throat. And when you bring up empirical historical evidence, which is rarely taught anymore in our universities, they create a new lying narrative, a false narrative.
Now, empirical evidence, as you say, is now white supremacy. This is white privilege,
Yes.
right? And the great thinker, Christian apologist G.K. Chesterton is reputed to have said, if you do not believe in God, you do not believe in nothing. You will believe in anything, right? And the elevation of terrorists, murderers, rapists to the level of martyrs now is delusional.
During the whole mob rule situation with Black Lives Matter, Marxists and Antifa in the streets yelling for justice when they were being profoundly unjust and they were doing their militant, horrible things, this juxtaposition of the masses of people around the world, at the university and in the streets of London, etc., it blows me away, because it's a juxtaposition of madness. They're supporting butchers. In some cases, some people are arguing, like Douglas Murray, worse than even the Nazis, celebrating like they've never seen before. This is insanity, pure insanity.
Before we go to break, because this is a good time for you to insert this, talk about what happened to a high-ranking official in London when she simply suggested, maybe we shouldn't be bringing in so many people to this country who hate this country. Talk about that, and we'll go to break.
Their Secretary of State, Homeland Security Secretary, what's her name? Sula Braverman. She's the second most powerful position in London. She did an op-ed in the Times where, in essence, she said Israel is a beacon of democracy. And what's happened to Israel is deplorable and horrible, and we need to deal with these jihadi migrations that have flooded into the streets of London and all throughout in Liverpool and Brighton and all throughout England. She says we need to deal with this very militant part of the population that is calling for, actually jihad is calling for the flag of England, the United Kingdom, 3 Christian crosses of the symbol of the flag, to be gone and replaced as a new caliphate under Islam.
And what happened to her for saying that?
She got fired for it.
Yep, they let her go.
She got fired for it.
Yep, for simply pointing out the threat. And we're going to come back after the break and look more of these existential threats to America and the West from this unmitigated political immigration policy. We'll see you in a moment. Back again with Jake Jacobs, and we're talking about pro-Israel protests, which are starting to ramp up to counter what's going on the left. Of course, the protests of the pro-Israel people in this country and the world have been largely peaceful, organized, safe. Can't say the same about the pro-Palestinian factions all across Western culture. Here at a House committee hearing in Washington, D.C., it's not just happening in London, Jake. This was a committee hearing on campus free speech, which was disrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters.
Well,
here's some of the pictures, right? Notice that some of them have tape across their mouths as if somehow the pro-Palestinian view is not getting out in the news. It's just nonsense. And it's ironic that they're trying to hijack this free speech conference by forcing their speech and shutting up other speech, right?
Well, you and I both know, I've worked for YAF for a long time. They love to give these signs out to their students. Disrupting speech is fascism. Yep. And it's not a coincidence that these jihadi types, these pro-Hamas types, they're in unholy alliance with fascists and communists and Nazi types around the world. They have no respect for true classic liberalism, the First Amendment of the United States. And to quote Adolf Hitler, they will use democracy to destroy democracy. We
have exactly to what you just spoke to. We have a wonderful testimony at this committee by a young woman who grew up as homeschool. She was a Christian, raised a Christian, and what they tried to do to her for her Republican Christian beliefs when she went to college. Listen to her.
My name is Jasmine Jordan, and I'm blessed to have the opportunity to speak with you all today. I was raised in the church and homeschooled from preschool through 5th grade. Both of these were crucial in shaping my early upbringing and my worldview. They gave me the strong foundation of moral beliefs and values that the Constitution was founded on. Lessons like iron sharpens iron, be a leader, not a follower, and so help me God are ingrained into every aspect of my character. As I progressed through the public school environment, this strong moral compass guided me throughout my journey, and I carried it with me to college. In spring 2022, I joined Iowa Young Americans for Freedom when I discovered that this organization aligned with the Christian conservative values instilled in me by my church and family. The more involved I became in the club, the more I discovered that the playing field for freedom of speech on college campuses was not equalized. The first time I noticed this was when Iowa YAF hosted Kellyanne Conway as a speaker. In response, I was doxxed in a group chat of over 800 students and was falsely labeled as a Nazi, a token, a white supremacist, and a bigot. Some individuals even expressed that I made them uncomfortable and feared that I might commit a hate crime against them, simply because I am Black and hold conservative principles.
A hate crime because I'm Black and Republican. And notice the sniveling, cowardly way the left goes about this. You're Black, you should be like us. And if you're not, we 800 of you are doxing you. But we're not the ones who are unsafe. You aren't the one who's unsafe. We, 800 of us doxing you because you might create a hate crime against us, one young Black female. You can hurt us, and there's nothing we can do that hurts you.
Now, Duke, this reflects what we were talking about earlier when they don't deal in the world of reality. So if Joe Biden says, if you don't vote Democratic, you're not Black, or if Alan West runs for governor of Texas as a Black conservative, or who's the guy from California, the talk show host who ran for governor of California? Larry
Elder?
Larry Elder.
Yeah.
Well, my point is these guys are Black, but they don't fit the narrative. Right. They're conservative Christians, and therefore they're said you're either an Uncle Tom or you're truly not Black. I mean, this is insanity. These are lies through and through. Duke, what's happening, look I have the logo here from Harvard University. It's Veritas, when it was founded in 1636. And by the way, your programs on the universities talk about this. The Christian foundation of the universities, what true classic liberal freedom of speech is all about. The engaging and debating and dialoguing and discussing ideas. Leftism wants nothing to do with that. And so when this beautiful young lady who just happens to be Black, who just happens to have conservative values, wants to articulate and express her ideas, they want to destroy her or anybody like her.
Yeah, and the scam is what offends liberals is hate speech. What offends conservatives and Christians and Republicans is also hate speech, right? So it's heads I win, tails you lose. Just being black or conservative or Christian is a hate crime. And when you complain about us treating you that way, then you're engaging in hate speech against us. You are threatening us. You're making us
triggered
uncomfortable.
Me. Yes, I need my safe space.
This is the way 3-year-olds argue. This is how 5-year-olds negotiate.
3 and 5-year-old fascists argue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the Well, it goes back to the bigger point. Besides allowing the left to make politics, morality, and dogma, the second thing that really happened here that's really, really dangerous is this. The only way you're a hero is if you're a victim. The more you can claim victimhood, the greater your moral authority goes. There's nothing in victimization that makes you necessarily heroic. Suffering is suffering, but that doesn't make you a hero. And so the left artificially cultivates the idea that the more you pretend to be victimized, the more you pretend that conservative speech is hate speech, the more you become heroic by being intolerant.
You need perpetual victimization,
yes,
so then you have a cause.
Yep.
And of course, it only comes into the area of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, or intersectionality. It can never come from anybody who happens to have an ancestry from Europe.
Unless you're a white woman, a liberal white woman,
Yes.
then you manage to escape. And before, we would be remiss hanging this up in a few minutes without showing you the other side of the coin, the chaos of the pro-Palestinian marches in places like London. Pro-Palestinian protesters filled London on Armistice Day. What a day to pick, by the way. Notice how the left is undoing the symbolic days of the West.
This is purposely intended.
It is.
You know, the jihadi, 9/11 was picked because of past historical battles within Islam. And so they were spitting in the face. That, by the way, it's American Veterans Day, Armistice Day, the end of World War I. And in essence, what they were saying is they were giving the finger to the Christian nation of the United Kingdom and the Judeo-Christian worldview. They literally, these individuals are calling for a revolution in the streets of London, England, and around the world.
And notice is where we started the program at this segment and the entire program. When you look at these protests that are coming from the pro-Palestinian sides, it's screaming, it's shouting people down, it's threatening violence. We saw in the first segment a young student at UCLA beating up a picture of Netanyahu and calling Jews horrible names. And again, if this was coming from the right, the universities would be absolutely merciless in stifling this.
And I've heard you talk about how many of the students here in America they're foreign nationals,
right.
Correct?
Right.
Which to me is infiltrating the culture in a very profound way. The same thing is happening in England. When you have the mayor of London, who's a Sunni Muslim by the name of Sadiq Khan, when you have the Prime Minister of England firing the Secretary of State who dares to say, we have to deal with this migration situation because it's destroying England as we understand it. We know at Cambridge University, they were going to show the Handel's oratoria called Saul, but they didn't because, God forbid, King David or David slew the Philistine, Goliath. And they said that would be an affront to the students. This is Cambridge University, the very same Cambridge that you talk about wonderfully, and why it was created as a university, as a Christian university back in the day to teach people how to think. They've destroyed the university, and it's destroying the very soul of England and America and Western civilization.
We have our answer to one troubling question. When, not if, when Hamas does here, or some terrorist group, what they did to the Jews on October 7th, we now know what the elites are going to say. We had it coming. It's our fault. We should be sympathetic to these. They've answered the question. This is how they will react when it happens in America. And that's going to wrap up the show. If you enjoy the program, please subscribe to our audio podcasts. Simply search Dr. Duke Show on your favorite free podcast platform. And if you happen to be on Rumble, please follow our Rumble channel at rumble.com/FreedomProject. For all of us here at the show, and for Jake Jacobs, thanks. And
don't forget One Nation.
Amen. We'll see you again.